challenge moving forward is how this 400-year-old concept can evolve and adapt to confront modern issues the world faces today.
Fighting against Philip II of Spain, fighting Napoleon, fighting the Kaiser, fighting Hitler, fighting the Soviet Union, and now fighting the last big, bad, nasty unfreedom, Islam.
That they wouldn't really believe, but they've seen it now, and that's true. So,
Bye-bye.
Now, they may talk about the public interest on that issue, but they will act out of self-interest. Their promises there are as phony as a Theresa May Happy Ramadan video.
It has been said that on Eid al-Fitr, it seems as though all the noise suppressed for a whole month has concentrated itself within one night. It is certainly a time for great celebration and joy, as we're seeing in Muslim communities across the country today.
Again, if you doubt that, ask yourself, if it's incompetence, if they're just idiots, why do all the mistakes go all the same way right across the whole continent? Incompetence is random and chaotic. This is all in one direction, continent-wide.
I think a lot of moderate religious people are very turned off by your discourse.
Well, some may be, and that may be my political error. There are
tactical error in terms of, because your job, you see your role as trying to convert the world to your point of view. I think. I mean, that's
I see my role as trying to persuade people to think for themselves and look at evidence. I mean, if they come round to my point of view as a result of looking at evidence, then so much the better.
We want that freedom to be protected, guarded by the law. We recognise that people do bad things. We don't go in for nice illusions about human nature. We see that the wolves need to be stopped from eating the sheep.
Give me an example.
What? Well, I'd have to go into sort of rather recondite scientific matters, but I've been wrong on scientific questions and have said so. Scientists actually rather like being wrong. It's unlike politicians; they get a sort of kudos from admitting that they're wrong, because that's how science proceeds.
We want that law to be practically, morally justified. That's why we like our spiky public debates in the papers, on the TV, in Parliament, in the open street.
This is the reality of life and free speech.
Here, anyone can express pretty much any opinion they like, however offensive.
Shut your stupid American mouth.
Most British Muslims think it's against holy law to show an image of the Prophet Muhammad.
It's ugly, but we want to thrash it out because we want to get it right. And we don't want to parasitise off other people's backs.
Non sono io l'infiltrato. Mi mancata di rispetto. Le vostre madri si vergognerebbero di voi.
You can see this picture is so similar to the original. So amazing. And how he put the hijab around the Mona Lisa.
Parla proprio come noi.
Sorry, I didn't understand. What you say? What will diminish the chance of ethnic Brits? Sorry, I don't get what you mean. Could you rephrase that?
So ethnic Brits are currently on course to become a minority by 2066, roughly thereabouts.
What's an ethnic Brit, Oswald? What do you mean by that?
English, Welsh, Scots and Irish.
So am I English?
Again, if you doubt this, look at Brexit. Brexit shows us exactly the same thing. The EU increases politicians' power.
This was conducted against other ethnic groups, such as the Mayans, some of whom were exterminated, and so we can quite accurately say that genocide was present in Central America before the coming of white people. The method of murder was simple and brutal. The victims were dragged to the top of a pyramid and their chests were chiselled open and the still beating heart removed, and then the corpse was just flung down the steps. It was in this way that the Aztecs believed that the sun could be maintained, that it was a bit like a central heating system, only it ran on fresh blood rather than gas or oil.
Because it gives politicians the opportunity to rule us via the back door by delegating legislation, by outsourcing it to the European Union, and effectively it denies us day-to-day democratic accountability. So they don't want to get rid of that, because if they get rid of that, that reduces their power. It makes ruling a tougher job for them. So they're pretending to be incompetent buffoons, really because they don't want to get rid of this thing which increases their power.
Go home, we don't want you unless you pay this level of tax. And the company says, fair enough, we'll move. So the state hasn't got the levers to pull.
The sort of Britain that we want is a Britain where the Sharia is implemented.
And then another side who are quite opposed. And I think all of us are trying to figure out how we deal with that middle group and how that splits as well.
And what it would mean is that the Muslims living in the state, they would live side by side with non-Muslims, and the non-Muslims would pay something called a tax, called the jizya, whereby their food, clothing and shelter and their honour will be protected and it will be provided for.
What are you talking about? We are getting land from them, and that's all. They are not being hounded out of the country. Not of their land, our land. And we agreed at Lancaster House that there would be land reform. Citizens by colonization, seizing land from the original people, indigenous people of the country.
Now, only the English-speaking world has that attitude towards freedom. And like us or not, whether you like us or not, we, the English, we are the seed of the Anglosphere. Other English-speaking countries will probably leave the Anglosphere. Canada appears to have fallen headlong for that decision recently. And America in coming decades may well leave the Anglosphere. Now that might look like some happy, hippie diversity dream, but it will end in unfreedom, because only the Anglosphere, the English-speaking world, loves freedom even when it's ugly. And if you leave the Anglosphere, you'll eventually fall for the temptations to avoid the ugly rigours of freedom.
They knew we had this program of land acquisition and land reform. They knew about it.
But what about the blacks?
And the British
then? Okay,
knew about
let's
it.
talk about.
There are differences within that, and we're all kind of grappling with getting the messaging right that resonates there, whilst kind of containing both of the kind of extreme ends as well.
However, I do think that there are those of us that see Eastern faiths through rose-colored glasses.
We wear dark clothes, trousers, no skirts, no obvious makeup. Red lipstick is out of the question. We erase ourselves, try to be the most discreet possible.
Why?
Because we're scared, simple as that.
If I was given a good deal of experience with it in my own life, I would fight it. Nothing motivates like personal experience. So it's only reasonable that those of us so inclined fight the greatest forces for religious oppression we see around us.
To succeed in this approach, according to Nietzsche, we should sculpt our character under the constraint of a single taste, selecting a life project to act as a guide for our creation. Without this constraint, we run the risk of losing ourselves in possibility, that is, of becoming overwhelmed by the myriad of choices regarding what to do and who to become.
No, Oswald, I'm sorry, but you don't get to set the rules in this conversation. If you stay tuned for the next hour, you will hear me defending the Millwall fans, right? So I, in fact, am incredibly critical, including, by the way, in environments I regularly mix in, of white liberals failing to understand the white working classes, and you will hear me talk about that in the next hour.
If the English go, if the English go, the English-speaking world will go. If the English-speaking world goes, then this idea of freedom under morally justified law will go, and then the world will go dark.
But that is a separate conversation. White Anglo-Saxons and their plight in this country is a separate conversation to insisting that I'm not English or I'm not British. And I'm hoping, Oswald, that you can pass the labels you're attaching to that from the idea where we may actually end up agreeing with a bit more than you think I would if you could just stop calling me names like you're not British, you're not English.
Islam is just the latest example of the nasty threat, the nasty challenge to freedom, and it will probably fall to us, the English-speaking world, to show the rest of the world how to win against it. I do that by fighting against mosque construction, using the law to prevent them constructing their fortresses, and you should do the same.
Is that fair, Oswald?
But I'm not calling you names. That's not calling
come
you
on,
a
don't
name.
get distracted, man. Forget that I said names. Don't get distracted. Stay focused.
Right, but you've
Stay
taken
focused.
offence at it.
No, I'm not offended at all, is what I've told you 3
just said
times.
I'm
I'm not
calling you
offended.
names.
No, sir, I said forget the names bit. Stay focused, yeah?
Okay, all right, okay.
Labels. Cool. Use the word labels if you like. The question is, can I be a member of the country of England? I'm not an Englishman or I'm not British, which is fine. You've got every right to hold that view. But unfortunately, you've done your own cause a disservice, and I suspect your cause is very important.
You will find that we're probably going to have to do this by ourselves, but we will end up doing it for the whole world.
The importance of your cause is to stick up for the white working classes. I'm with you on that. But you've done your whole cause a disservice because now all anyone's going to hear, and I'm not calling you this, by the way, because I don't call people names, but all anyone is going to hear is
violations of sovereignty and disputes over what constitutes a violation.
So we cannot expect politicians ever to solve this problem. They will never address it. Don't expect that. They won't.
But they've seen it now.
That there's one English ethnicity.
And that's true. So